Hi everybody. Starting chapter 6 today. We're going to a little bit more difficult with chapter 6. Oops. And we'll be reaching our most difficult lesson will be on in chapter 7. Okay, so the next two lessons, 6.1 and 6.2, I'm actually going to break it into two separate lessons. So if you notice when you print these out, there's day 1 homework and day 2 homework. That's because I'm going to split these lessons into two. Same with 6.2. Again, you'll see homework for different days because I'll cut these lessons in half just because they're quite lengthy. Okay, so stuff you guys learned, mean, median, and mode was something you learned when you were, I think, in grade 8. And you probably haven't touched on it since then. But it's quite easy. But we're taking it a step further, obviously, being in grade 12. Okay, so we have our mean, which is our averages. So don't mind the pink pencil, by the way. So it's the sum of all your entries divided by the total number of entries. So when we have a population mean, we have the formula here. So add up all your entries and divide by the total. Okay. You'll see there's a population average and a sample average, or population mean, sample mean. It's the same thing. It's just the actual letter changes, but there's nothing difference. Okay, so a couple new symbols though. So we have this symbol here. It looks like a kind of a U, but little extra leg to it. Okay, so this is not an accident. That's the way it is. So it's it looks like this. Okay, this is called mu. So mu is kind of like a U, kind of like an M, kind of like a U, so it's a mu. Okay, so add up all the entries and divide by the total. In this case, this is the population size. Okay, then we move on to the sample mean. So this, you have to make one correction to this. It's not just an X. I couldn't find the symbol for it, but it's X with a little line over top. Okay, so X with it's a line, or we call it a bar. So this is called X bar. Okay, so mu and X bar represent average or mean. So again, add up all your entries and divide by the total. In this case, this would be the sample size. Okay, then we have mean or averages for group data and for weighted mean. We will be looking at these two tomorrow, so in the next lesson. So we'll get back to these. It's not that difficult. So we have the symbol sigma, which we talked about before. It means the sum of. So the sum of all the frequencies times the midpoint. So F is frequency. You'll see when we get there. So frequency, and M represents midpoint. So all the frequencies times their midpoint divided by the total frequency. Again, we'll touch on the next lesson. And then we have weighted mean. So your weighted average, and this is what we actually calculate our averages with regards to school. So like knowledge and an application are worth a little bit more, whereas communication and thinking are weighted a little bit less. So this is weighted mean. So this is all your entries. Okay, so this is the values of your entries. So your values times by the weight, and then divided by the total number of weights. So each value or entry times it by its weighting, divided by the total weightings. I'm going to touch, we'll touch on that in the next lesson. Okay, then we have, so that's the average or mean. Now we have our median. The median is the middle value. So it's the middle value of all the entries, okay? You must order the entries from least to greatest. Don't go greatest to least. You'll see why in our upcoming lessons. So you have to put the entries in order from the least to the greatest. You must. Okay? And that's in order to find the middle value. Okay? To find the middle value. If there are two middle values, If there are two milli values, then you would add them together and divide by 2. So you take the average of them. And I'll show you with examples. Okay, then we have mode. Mode is the entry that comes up the most frequent or the most often. Okay, that's quite easy. Just look at the numbers. You can see which comes up the most frequent. Okay, outlier. Okay, you've learned this throughout high school. So it's a point that doesn't fit the trend. So it's different from the rest. So on a graph, it could look something like this, and you have a point that doesn't really fit the trend. A few weeks ago in March, we actually had, it was early April or late March, we had a day that was like 17 degrees. And then the rest of the days were about 5 degrees. So that one day was kind of like an outlier for temperatures. Okay, so in a scatter graph, it would look like that, or scatter plot. But you could also have it within a histogram. So you have a bunch of graphs here, and then you might have a bar off to the side. Okay, so this would be considered the outlier. Okay, those two things would be the outliers. And I'm actually going to pull up something. If I could grab up our marks. Okay, now we're going to get to distributions. So this is the distribution of results. Okay, so there's 3 different distributions. So we have one that goes like this. And we one that goes up like this. And then we'll have another distribution that looks like this. Okay, so 3 different distributions. This is when you're having your entries. Just give me a second. I'm trying to pull up something. Sorry, I'm still here. Just trying to pull up Markbook. Okay, so when our entries are spaced out, so we have you have some entries that are low, a lot of them are in the middle, and then we have some high entries. So this is called normal distribution. Okay, normal distribution, and this is perfectly symmetrical. So perfectly symmetrical. What happens when we have a normal distribution of results, in the middle, we have your mean, your median, and your mode all land within the middle of the distribution chart or the graph. Okay, then we have a graph that could look like this. So it has kind of a slow beginning and then goes up and then comes right back down. Okay, so these ones here, we call them negatively skewed. Okay, so then we call it negatively skewed because the tail, it's called the tail, is on the left side or the negative side. Okay, sometimes this is called left skewed as well. Okay, so what happens here in your results, all your most frequent ones here are still here. So this is called your mode. Okay, and then your median will be over here. So your median is your halfway, will be over here, and then your average or mean ends up getting thrown to the left. Okay, and I'll show you with an example momentarily. Just pulling up our mark book. Distribution. Okay. Then we have something called a right skewed, because our tail is in the right direction. So this is, we're positively skewed, or right skewed. Okay, this is when our tail is kind of in the right, in the positive end. So what happens is your mode is still in the middle. Your median is going to be pushed to the right, and your average or your mean will be more right. Okay, so mode's always at the highest or at the peak. Your median will be the next one. It's always in the middle, so it's in between your mode and mean for both of them. Okay, so I'm just going to show you an example of our class results. So here are our marks in our class. So you can see that we have a tail. Oops, this is actually my wrong class. That was last semester. Let's do our class. Class report, distribution. Okay, so here we can see our results of our class. So this would be something would be like the tail, and it goes straight up and then right down. Okay, so we have some marks down here. Okay, we call this would be negatively skewed. Okay, because it makes a tail that's on the left side. So what happens to this? Well, our highest, or our mode, is going to be in the 90 to 99 range. This is our mode. So that means our median will be a little bit to the left. So if you look up here and to the right, our median is 88%. So that's the middle person in the class. And then our average gets dropped to 83. So this tail causes our average to be decreased. Okay, so it decreases our average of the class. Okay, so let's just show you that. So I'm going to pull up another one. Let's see if my other class. Let's go my grade 9s. Class report, distribution. Okay, so here's another one, kind of a weird one for grade 9. This is really weird. So we have here, this would be called the outlier. So we talked about outliers. So this would be an outlier. And then it's kind of a really long tail and then shoots right up. So this is kind of a weird one because you would want these bars to be a little bit higher here. So more of a negatively skewed. So what happened is our mode is in this area here. So I have 11 students in the 90s. And then my median is going to be dropped a bit. So here our median is 81. And since the tail is really long, then our average gets dropped right down to a 76. And I'll show you one more class. Let's go my period 4 class. Distribution. So this is almost close to a normal distribution, almost. If this one was a little bit lower. But again, outlier, straight up and down. So our mode is in the middle. Okay, it's almost a normal distribution because our mode would be at 80. Our median is in this range too, and our average is in this range too. So this is very close to a normal distribution, but this outlier brings the average down. Okay. All right. So let's continue with this. All right, just one example we'll be working with. Okay, so before heading on vacation to Mexico, you observe the actual high temperature for 7 days. The table shows the temperatures. Okay, so day 1 through 7 and the different temperatures here. So A, determine the mean. Okay, so we're determining the mean. Since this is a sample mean, because it's a sample of the temperatures, we use this symbol here, so X bar. So X bar is X1 plus X2 all the way up to the 7 entries we have, divided by the total. Okay, so our entries are 27 plus 29 plus 32, 29, 45, 29, and 31. all divided by 7. I don't have much room here, and I forgot my calculator. Okay, I'm gonna put this on pause. I'm gonna stop it and then record next video with my calculator.